This week's Blue Light Hotspot is the country of Turkey. And Turkey has revealed a lot of things that were hidden to my consciousness I didn't know about. And so I'm going to have a lot of fun sharing it with you. And you can let me know in the comment section if this is new news to you or you have always known this. But I really enjoyed getting some information, wisdom, and ancient wisdom and insights from this country of Turkey, known as Anatolia in its ancient original name. So let me go ahead and get started. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I do these Blue Light Hotspot locations once a week on Saturdays. So I'm glad that you are here. So as many of you know, I will tune into the frequency of an area. The blue star beings, the blue celestial star beings are always explaining to me that in this kind of quantum frequency, that carries a lot more weight than anything that's going on in humanity right now, or anything that's going on in the world, even when it has to do with wars, or it has to do with conflict in religions or politics. What the blue beings of light say is that it's the actual frequency that is like a tapestry thread that weaves through everything. So as a psychic clairvoyant, I'm also a registered nurse, but I'm always really tuning into those frequencies. So let me kind of share with you, I've got it written on my piece of paper here, what are the frequencies that I was picking up on this country of Turkey that used to be known as Anatolia. The first thing that I do is I can feel there's a richness. It's just like a really rich feeling, like it's just full of color, and it's full of scents. It's got a lot of, what am I trying to do? Like incense, you can smell that. But there's also a lot of fragrances of plants, of flowers, a lot of fragrances coming through, almost overpowering, but in a really good way. So as you're listening to me talk about Turkey, talk about Anatolia, we'll see if maybe you can pick up on some of the frequency thread that's coming through, and maybe you'll pick up on some smells and fragrances as well. I can hear tones, I can hear sounds, I can hear a deep pulsing in the earth. I can also, what's coming through really strongly are insects, the beetles and scarabs that we often associate with the country of Egypt. So there are insects. This is the first time I've had insects come through. There's also hieroglyphs, so that really surprised me as well. I can also hear different languages that I'm not familiar with. However, I'm not familiar with all languages, but it sounds like it has this kind of layering effect of many different tones that seem multidimensional. So whatever this kind of language is, I can hear it in the background, and I can hear it almost at this constant level. Talking stones. So the energy of the stone people, if you've never heard of stone people, where the ancient indigenous ones do consider the stones to be people, to have a spirit. The stone people, their main job, if we're going to call it a job, is to carry the ancient wisdom that goes back millions and millions and maybe even billions of years ago. And so I am hearing talking stones, strong influences from the stone peoples. All right. Then I hear a really high frequency that's above ground that maybe is not very grounded or very connected to below ground. And then I hear there's this, it's kind of pushed up like this light, and then it's like this dark, heavy layering. And I write down layers of power, layers of manipulation, layers of suffering, layers of doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, but that you get the same results. And then I hear vulnerable to radical results. So this is these are the words that came in, that at times this area has been vulnerable to radical results. I could feel the qualities being very similar to Palestine and to Israel. There may be other cultures, whether it's Jewish or Christianity or Muslim. But when I'm talking about what are the similar qualities, it's where it's a land mass that is incredibly sacred, that would probably go back hundreds of thousands of years. Not really certain as to why this is such sacred ground. I'm talking about Turkey as well. But it's like there are many cultures that feel the sacredness, and that sacredness is directly connected to their cultural belief systems. So it's just like layers and layers and layers of many people considering that place sacred. Now, like for me, for example, living in Washington State, and we have an enormous, beautiful mountain called Mount Rainier. And it was originally known as Mount Tahoma. So there was a man who came through and named the mountain after himself, Mount Rainier. But its original name was Mount Tahoma, and it was the place where God lives. So you can imagine there would be many different indigenous cultures that I wouldn't say maybe lay claim to the mountain, but that it's in their history, their stories, even if there are different indigenous cultures that would share different stories of the mountain where God lives. So it's kind of like that, even in Turkey, even in Israel and Palestine. It's like it's a piece of sacred ground that many cultures, there are stories that come out of those places. I hope I'm making sense. So it's going to make more sense as I get into this a little bit more. So I said similar to qualities of Palestine, Israel in relationship to many cultures having an influential history over the same land mass. So this is what I'm noticing with Turkey. Now, I got that it was so sacred, and there's some ancient teachings, and the feeling I have is these teachings were shared with this area. I'm going to call it from here on out Anatolia, because that feels, when I say Anatolia, it has depth to it. So every time I say that, you just know in your mind it's Turkey. But what Spirit was sharing with me is that it was as if this area has a high level of photonic light, of light codes, that there was a lot of information shared. There seemed to be very high level, I'm just going to call them either gods or goddesses or priests or priestesses, but there were these certain people of a very high level order that resided in this area, and they were able to download this very, very sacred, ancient sacred information that they would share with the peoples. And the information that I'm getting it was a way of helping everyone to remember that they are spiritual beings, and how to work with their spiritual intuition, their spiritual sense, to reconnect in with the sacredness of who they were. And what I'm being shown here, what Spirit was showing me, was that many of them were guided to kind of go out into the world and to carry those sacred messages of the divine out into the world. Now, travel far and wide to spread the ancient teachings. I wrote of what? The ancient teachings of what? So I think many of those ancient teachings either have been documented now or were lost. The impressions are the great teachers traveled to teach, calling many people to the sacred land. So when they went out to teach, this is what Spirit's telling me, that many people were like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. I have to go to Anatolia. I have to move there. It just feels so beautiful what's being said. I just really want to be there. So a lot of different cultures came to this area. So this is what I'm talking about, where they had that shared wisdom and knowledge and stories that have lasted throughout the years. Many go out into the sacred ground. Many cultures wish to be as close to the sacred sites as possible. The land is incredibly sacred, and it has the potential to open you up to have clear communication with God. So we'll just I'll respond to God as the creator, the supreme wisdom, or goddess, however you want to talk about that. But I will be talking about the famous goddess that came from Anatolia as well. Okay, so then I had to read this again because I wanted to get it straight in my mind. I've written it. But imagine like a high priest who can see all and be all, or a priestess. And they go out and they travel and they end up going to different kingdoms or different emperors, and they would share this knowledge. Well, then it seemed like the emperors or the kings would kind of want to keep that person all themselves, like they would encompass them in the castle or the emperor's place of living. But what Spirit was saying is that they wanted to keep them all to themselves. So there was a sense of greed, power, and control, wish to keep the ancient wisdom keepers to themselves so that they could use that knowledge to gain power. What ended up happening is, as these ancient ones were kept away from their land, they couldn't return back to their land, they became very depleted. And I loved this part of the story because it really tells us something. Isolated from each other, from the heart of their wisdom, their land, their practice. The sacred wisdom keepers found themselves depleted from their inability to recharge from their ancestral heritage land. So I thought about this because just recently, I was born in Arkansas, North Little Rock, for anyone in that area. To be more specific, I hadn't been back there in about 40 years. And during the solar eclipse, I returned to what I would call my ancestral land. It was powerful. It was like it was definitely like a coming home. And I think a lot of you maybe have experienced that. It's like, well, I felt like I was coming home. And so it felt that way in Arkansas, and it just felt like I belonged there. And so I was very aware of my ancestors being from that area. We ended up staying in this little hotel. We're going to get set up for the solar eclipse. But it was like, why did my brother choose this place out of all the places in Arkansas that you can tune into the solar eclipse? Why this of all places? Because I'm a believer that I never end up anywhere by accident. There's always a reason. So my parents show up, and the first thing my mother says is, oh, my dad was born here. So that means that my grandfather was born there. And so it was like, okay, so that's why we needed as a family to arrive there to watch the solar eclipse. So when I'm reading this about Anatolia and the wisdom keepers who were blocked from returning back to their homeland, how depleting that would be. And so I think about that because I don't live on my homeland. And I know here in the United States, we have a lot of our culture, our population that is from different countries. We're this melting pot. And so how do you keep from being depleted when you maybe can't even go back to your homeland? And so what I have been doing is just meditating, and I just virtually connect with my homeland. So, but that can be another topic later. So let's get back to Turkey or Anatolia. So they ended up realizing that not everybody's going to be ready for this high-level sacred knowledge. You've heard me say this before. If you've been following my videos, if you're new to my videos, this comes up often from the star beings where they talk about different places in the world, hiding the knowledge, hiding the secrets, hiding the keys, to this expanded knowledge in different parts of the world. When the blue light started coming through, it was all about what is hidden will be revealed, the truth will reign, and justice will be served. And they've been coming through and talking about this frequency of this blue light really cuts through a lot of the cloudiness. And so what they're saying here is that there is ancient knowledge and it will begin to reveal itself. But here I thought this was fascinating, is that the blue beings of light were sharing with me that the high priest, priestesses, the gods and goddesses, they stopped talking to humans about the ancient teachings because in some of them it wasn't being respected and valued and honored and revered in all the right ways. And some of that was taken as abuse. So what the blue beings of light said, these great teachers stopped communicating with their mouth and only communicated with each other telepathically. And so they wanted to hide their words from others. And so what in Anatolia, what I'm being told is if any of us travel to that area, our own telepathic communication will be activated. However, I know there's a lot of you watching this video right now and you're thinking, I'm never going to go to this area. And so you can meditate on the frequency. You can go into meditation and you can just meditate on the frequency because it's very, what I'm being told, can highly activate and clear your own telepathic channels so that telepathy can come easier for you as well. All right. So this is where I started looking up some information. And the first thing that I wanted to know was what was happening during the Neolithic period, the ancient megalithic time. Did they have megalithic structures? And so 12,000, it's been dated to be 12,000 BC. This area is called Göbekli Tepe. Göbekli Tepe. So it's spelled Gobekli Tempe, Tempe. This area was discovered only in 1994 in Anatolia or Turkey. 1994, it still remains in the early stages of its archaeological discovery. And apparently there's this enormous land mass and it's all underground and it was buried on purpose, not by accident. It was buried on purpose to preserve and save and keep it from being destroyed. Isn't that amazing? And so here, when I was tuning into Göbekli Tepe, is where I could hear the wind coming through and I could hear sounds coming off of these stones. So I invite you to go look it up and learn more information about this. It is considered in Turkey the oldest ancient megalithic pillars that have ever been discovered. They are the oldest in the world. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about that. And the only reason why I'm not sure about that is because, like, I think about the pyramids in Egypt, and they're talking about, they're 3,000 or 4,000 years old. And honestly, my intuitive sense tells me they're a lot older than that. So we'll just say, in the current scientific mode that we have in our ability to date things, I think that we will be redating things a lot as our scientific ability allows it, if that makes any sense. But it's really important that you tune into your own sense about these things. Okay, now this is another part that really, really surprised me. So, the earliest Christian church and its history was recorded in Anatolia in Turkey, the oldest Christian church. And then the Council of Nicaea. So let me just read it how I've written it on my paper. The first Council of Nicaea came together in Anatolia in 325 AD. The Council of Nicaea was the first council in history of the Christian church that was intended to address the entire body of believers. It was convened by the Emperor Constantine to resolve enormous controversy over whether or not Christ was a divine being or a made-up figure. Okay, so this was like 300 years later. It's like, did this person Christ, Jesus Christ, actually exist? And so the Council of Nicaea went around and collected the historical documentation, and that's why in the Bible it's told from many different perspectives. But they collected all of this material, and then it was the Council of Nicaea who presented it in this bound book that we now know as the Bible. Okay, that blew my mind. It was like, I had no idea that this happened in Turkey and Anatolia. So I've heard of the Council of Nicaea. So if you haven't, again, you can let yourself have a lot of fun reading about it. But now, guess what? So in Anatolia, Turkey, in 380 AD, Christianity was made the official religion in that country. The official religion. So I looked it up to find out, where does Christianity lie now in its current history? And I'm told that in Turkey, Anatolia is 99% Muslim. So, but they do not have an official religion. So they still have a lot of Christians that live there, but it is 99% Muslim. So I think that's why it surprised me that the Council of Nicaea came from this area and met in this area and gathered all the biblical historical data of its time. All right. Are y'all hanging in there with me? I just love these archaeological digs, and with our intuitive archaeologist, I will love reading any more material that you have, because I probably could have devoted a doctorate level study of my entire lifetime of this area and just how significant it is. But let me get back to something else that's quite significant. The goddess Cybele. So Cybele, Cybele, the goddess Cybele, known as, so the goddess Cybele came from Anatolia. She is known as the mountain mother, the earth goddess. She is Gaia. So it was like, wow. Do you ever wonder like where these sources come from? Now, again, it's written by somebody who may or may not be the expert, but there's enough history written, and early history written, about the mountain mother, the earth goddess, goes by the name Cybele. Gaia was known as an exotic mystery goddess who is said to travel in a chariot pulled by lions. Have any of you ever heard of her before? I've heard of Gaia, but I did not know about the chariot and the lions. She is known as the mother of all gods, all humans, and all animals, and the planet. So anyway, Anatolia, Turkey, has a whole lot of history. Kind of makes me want to go there. So as I'm wrapping things up here, I just wanted to mention the 5 top sacred areas in Anatolia are. So here are the top 5. Number 1, top 5 of the most sacred sites known currently, or named currently, according to Wikipedia, is number 1 is the house of the Virgin Mary. And it's believed that this was the last home that the Virgin Mary lived in. And I was just like, what? So anyway, I didn't do a deep dive, but you intuitive archaeologists are invited and welcome to explore that a little bit more and add it in the comments section. I'd love to read it. Get this, number 2, the Temple of Artemis. The Temple of Artemis was founded, I get blown away by this, founded by Amazonian female warriors. Okay, let me just say that again. Amazon female warriors. So we've heard of Amazonian women, female warriors, but there's actually a temple, the Temple of Artemis, that is located here. Okay, number 3, I love this one too, because this came up in my intuitive sense. The Oracle of Miletus. 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 Oracle of Miletus is the place of the voice of God. So I'm kind of blown away by this, because when I was just tuning in intuitively, it was like it just like light codes came down from heaven and to this spot, and to find out they have a place. And so people go, it's a high pilgrimage place. They go there to get advice from God. Love it. Okay. And then the Aphrodites. So there's a temple for Aphrodites. This temple was built 5,800 BC. People go here and make pilgrimages for fertility and to have abundance, growth, and crops, known as the ancient mother goddess Aphrodites. This place is awesome. And then now, number 5. Now, they do have other sacred sites, but I just asked for the top 5. Number 5, Rumi's Mausoleum. Rumi's Mausoleum and Dervish Lodge. It is the single most important literary and spiritual place of Sufism where Rumi resided. So if you've never heard of the Rumi books or the Rumi poetry, you just type in whatever search engine you want to do, Rumi. You can read the beautiful literary poetic works that touches you so deeply when you read it. And so when I heard that it was like, oh my gosh, this is where Rumi's mausoleum is, I was just, again, my mind was blown. So the hotspot, Blue Light Hotspot, the focus of the blue light, this entire country is just this beautiful, beautiful blue, blue, blue. I don't know that it sits on a mountaintop, but I see like this mountainous levels of blue light that is really encompassing this entire area. So I invite you to meditate on it. I invite you to explore, to learn a lot more, and hey, maybe even take a trip there. All right, everyone, thanks for tuning in to this week's Blue Light Hotspot, and I will see you on the next one. Bye-bye.